Hi everyone, this is fikayofikitao.com and today we're going to be talking about Cascading Style Sheets, CSS. CSS is actually one of the three basic web languages. We have HTML, that is the markup language. We have JavaScript, which is the scripting language. HTML actually builds the structure of web pages, whereas JavaScript controls behavior. CSS is actually a styling language. CSS is meant to style your page, add beauty to your page. The main function of CSS is to add that look and feel to your page. So today I'm going to be introducing CSS to you, and I'm going to show you the different ways you can use CSS. As you see written here, there are actually three different ways you can use CSS on your web pages. The first is inline. Now I have a page opened here in Aptana Studio. I have a link here. I have a paragraph here with some text inside saying this is a paragraph, and I have another paragraph down here with another text inside saying this is another paragraph. And I have the web page open. Let me just refresh this so that you can see how the web page actually looks. This is the default styling of the web page. This is the content styled based on the default CSS inside the browser. And one thing you have to understand is that there is no page that is not styled. The only thing is that each browser comes with its own default CSS. So, and the CSS is actually very similar. You see a link with a default blue text and underlined. A paragraph is just a black text, 16 pixel size or font size. So that is actually how things appear by default. But with CSS you can actually control the way your content is displayed. You can control the styles of your content. So looking back at what I have written here, the first way you can use CSS is inline. That is actually within your web pages. You can use CSS directly in your HTML, inside the HTML tag, using the style attribute. For a lot of you who have written a lot of HTML before now, which is most of you, definitely you will have used the style tag, the style attribute, sorry, a couple of times, and you will have started getting some ideas about the whole about CSS, about some of the properties you can set in CSS, things like border, color, things like text color, font size, font style, and the rest. So quickly we're going to be looking at that. Let's open Aptana Studio, then we'll go to our link. Going to our link, we'll put an attribute style inside. That's actually the attribute you use to define inline styles. So I have it within a style with your open parentheses, close parentheses. Then let's try and style this link. First we are going to try and give it a background color. Let's do that, background color, and let's set that to green. And you can see this actually shows us the basic CSS format. You have the name of the property you are trying to set. Here we're trying to set the property background color. Then after that you have a column without spaces. Immediately after you write background color, that's the value name, the property name rather, then you write your colon, then the value you want to give to the attribute. Here we're setting the background color to green. Green is the value here. So you have background color, semicolon, then green. Then you have your semicolon immediately after. What the semicolon does is that it separates the style definition from another, because we don't expect that we're only going to be setting the background color. We still want to set things like color. We want to also set things like the padding, the border color, and the rest. So you actually separate style definitions. Sorry about that. You actually separate style definitions with a semicolon, and after that you put a space. You can see the space there. You put a space, then you can write your other style. So another thing we're going to be doing is to be giving it a display of block. Sorry, block actually. How am I getting block spelled wrongly? Spell block. Then let's give it a padding of 2 pixels. 2 pixels will be enough. Then another thing we want to do is to remove the underline. That will be by setting the text decoration to none. Yeah, text decoration to none. Good. So we just save that and go check it up in our browser. Now as you can see the default styling. But now when we refresh the page, we have styled link, and we're actually getting an undesired result here. We don't want this to actually fill the whole page, so we can set the width. We can set the width of the link. Let's say width to something, let's say 100 pixels. Then to move the text to the center, we just set text align. Text align center. Yeah, let's check that out and see what it gives us. Good. Now you see our link nicely styled with a width of 100 pixels. The link is still appearing with the default blue. That's because we didn't specify any value for the color, and we have a nice green background and a padding of 2 pixels around it. So for us to see the link very well, we can just set the color of the link. Let me try and bring this down so that you guys can see it very well. Let's go down, yeah, the space, and okay, let's put our semicolon first. Put a space, then say color. I would like to just do white for that, so that to be very visible, white. Then we go here, refresh the page, and yeah, we have a nicely styled link. And as you can see, it still behaves perfectly as a link. The cursor changes to a pointer when we hover, when we mouse into that. So that's how you actually use inline styling. A couple of times you might actually need to specifically style a tag using the style tag, because you want to because very soon we're going to be looking at things like inheritance, we're going to be looking at cascade and other things, and you're going to be seeing the way CSS overrides one another, the way CSS will override one another based on cascade, inheritance, and the rest, whether you're using a document level CSS or you're using an inline CSS or CSS from an external file. So this is basically how you set CSS rules. So I really need to clear this. Good. I think this should solve that. Thank you very much. Sorry about that, guys. So this is actually how you set inline rules for CSS. And you might be wondering where are all these values coming from, most especially for some of you that didn't really experiment a lot with the style tag, also style attribute. I don't know why I keep saying tag. Style attribute while you were writing your HTML. You can actually just pick up any CSS books and read a bunch of. We might not be able to cover every one of them in this tutorial. You can get a CSS book and just learn as many of these properties as you can. There are not really many, and most of them you get to understand them when you use them. And I bet with you will definitely find situations where you just have to, where you just need one of them, and you just have to look for the property that does what you want, and boom, there you have it. That's how you learn more and the rest. And there are also a bunch of sites out there you can go to and check out for so many of these CSS properties. Now the next thing we're going to be looking at is how to use document level CSS. First we talked about inline CSS, that was we just did with the style attribute. Then we're going to be looking at how to use document level CSS. Now document level CSS actually exists, or actually comes up inside the head tag of your script. You actually introduce document level CSS using a special tag called the style tag, and inside the style tag you define a type equals text slash CSS, then you close the style tag nicely. Okay, so that's how you introduce document sorry, I'm not trying to save that. That's how you introduce document level CSS. So what we do, just copy this, just trying to be a little bit lazy here, just copy this and go into our head and paste that. Now don't get me wrong, you don't actually have to do this somewhere else and copy it into your code. I'm just doing that to save the time, so get me wrong. And there's also a practice I love so much, that is putting an HTML comment, putting all my CSS definition into an HTML comment. This is actually not really necessary right now because most browsers are very advanced. They all support CSS, but initially this was used to actually ignore this line of code for browsers that don't have CSS support. Yeah. So document level CSS, this is actually how we start using our document level CSS. Start with your style tags, your opening and closing tags. You set your type, text equals CSS, even though if you're writing CSS3 that's not really necessary. Now at first you can style tags directly. You can style tags directly. For example, I might just choose to style all my paragraph tags. I'll just type P, that's the tag name without the opening and closing quotes. Then I can now define any of my style rules inside this opening and closing curly braces. For example, I can say the color of every text inside my paragraph tag should be blue. Okay, then you see on this page I have two paragraphs. This is my first paragraph, this is my second paragraph. And if we go to our page also, we have the first paragraph here, we have second paragraph. Now when we reload this page, you see that both paragraphs now appear with the color blue. Why? Because what we're doing here is actually saying grab all the paragraphs inside the page and set the color to blue. And you see this, the way we defined our CSS is exactly the same way as we defined it while we're using inline styling. So there's nothing actually different. The only thing is that you just this one now exists at the document level, so it just goes down and controls every single element it picks. Any single element that you've defined styles for just does that. So we can even add more styles to this. Font size, say 30 pixels, that's a lot. Say font style italic. And when we go to our page, refresh that, and yeah, our two paragraphs respond to what we're doing. So that's already useful, and I know a lot of you will have ideas popping into your head right now. Now most of the time we're not actually going to be using this. Okay, in some cases we might just use it to set some defaults, then you can use some other CSS rules to override it later. Now more of what we're going to be using in our document level CSS, even CSS generally, mostly in document level and in external sheets. I don't think it's used in inline, is the use of classes and IDs. Classes and IDs. Classes, or let me just say class and ID. Now class and ID are attributes that allow you to name an element so that you can actually apply styles to that element uniquely. Now I'm going to repeat that. Class and ID allow you to set a particular name on an element so that you can now use that name as a reference to style that element specifically or uniquely. Now let's put that to use. First I'm going to try and comment this out, and this is how you actually do commenting in CSS. You do a asterisk, and you go down where you want to comment to end, asterisk /, and that comment. That's the only type of commenting in CSS. You don't have any other commenting apart from that. Okay, so get used to it. Now we're going to set a class on this paragraph. So I told you it's an attribute, class equals, and I'm going to set it as class paragraph. Now you have to be very careful, because the names you give your classes and IDs are case sensitive, so you have to make sure that you correctly spell the names when you're referring to them up here in your document level CSS. So most of the time it's actually a good practice to just copy the name from down here. Instead of trying to retype it, just copy it so that you avoid errors, and paste it here. Now to access this class from up here, what you do is you put a period, then the name of the class, a period, then name of the class. So here I'm putting a period, then class paragraph. Then you can open your parentheses and do any sort of styling you want to do. Now before I do that, I'll just go to my page and refresh it so that everything, the paragraphs, go back to their default styles. So we go back here, then now we're styling the first paragraph. That's the class paragraph. We give it the name. You can actually give it any name you want. I just like to call it class paragraph so it's more descriptive. And be very careful. Try and give your classes and IDs descriptive names so that you can easily be able to understand what is going on. You can be able to understand what you're trying to style. So first we just can set the color of this to say red, then font size to say 24 pixels. I think we should be okay with that. Then we can just make it bold, like font weight bold. Good. So we'll go back to our page, refresh it, and you see that first paragraph appeared with all our styling. The text is red, it's bold, and it has a font size of 24 pixels. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Now that's for classes. Now for an ID, let's go to our paragraph tag here, then set an ID to it, then name it ID paragraph. Again, case is important, spelling must be correct. Okay, ID paragraph. So I'm just going to copy that because I'm going to be needing it up there just like I use the class. Now, you know, in the case of a class, when we're trying to refer to a class, we put a period, then the class name. But for an ID, what you do is put a pound sign, then the name of the ID. You get that? A pound sign, then the name of the ID. That's how you refer to a particular ID on the page. And when you're done with that, you can start with your curly braces and set your styles. So we're just going to set the same styles but different values for this. Set the color of this one to blue, the font size to let's say 40 pixels, make it bigger. Then we're just going to change font style now, not font weight, font style italic. No, italic. Good. So we set that color blue, font size 40 pixels, font style italic. We go to our page. Now just watch what happens to the next paragraph, and there you have it. All our styles are in. But the cool thing is that we're actually styling this particular paragraph with a class, styling this particular paragraph with an ID. Now some of you might want to ask, what's the difference? I don't get it. Why do we have to have class and ID when they basically do the same thing? Yeah, true. They do the same thing. But the main difference between class and ID is that ID is more specific. Now, more than one element on your page can have the same class. For example, we gave a particular element, that's a p tag, that's the paragraph tag. We gave it a class of class paragraph. We can actually have 10, 25, 4 paragraphs having that class, even divs having that same class, links having that same class, if it applies, if it makes any sense. But once we define an ID with a particular name, no other element can have that name. It's very, very unique. So you should use ID for things you know you won't repeat. Styles you know you're not going to repeat. But use classes for styles you know you're going to repeat on different kind of elements. Hope you get my point. IDs are more specific, they are more unique. Classes can be used for as many elements as possible, as long as they require the same styling, as long as they share a particular set of styling in common. So that's the basic idea between classes and IDs. Now there's so many other ways to actually link your elements on your page. We have chart selectors and all that. I will just advise you to read that up. Then is CSS. This is just basic. We're not going to be going to so many child selectors now or descendant selectors right now, because child selectors are even not really supported by most browsers, but descendant selectors are very, very okay. So I think I'm just going to try and do one type of descendant selector, then we'll just move on. I'm going to I'm going to do a div. I'm going to do a div here around somewhere on my page. Then I'm just close that div, just to show you the basic idea of what the descendant selector is. Then I'm going to put let me look for a different element. Let's say okay, let's just say p tag. We just put a paragraph inside that div. Just go close the paragraph like that. Now I want to define a style for this particular paragraph, and I don't want to use a class, I don't want to use an ID. I could just put a class on this paragraph and style it the way I want, but I want to style this paragraph based on its container. Its container is this div tag, but I want to style this paragraph exactly. Now what I need is a descendant selector. Now how do descendant selectors work? I have a div here and it has a child, a paragraph. So what I just basically do is I write div, then put a space, then p. Now what I'm basically telling the browser here is that I want you to style the p tag inside every div. Every paragraph tag that you find inside the div, style it. So just do this. Then put content in that paragraph first. Descendant selectors at work. Yeah, descendant selectors at work. That's what that says. Then I'm just going to try and check it out on my page before I do anything. So you see descendant selectors at work, unstyled. So I go back to my page and go up here and style this and just give it a color of tan and give it a font weight and make that bold. Good. So just go back to our browser, the default, refresh the page, and yeah, as you can see now, you see that this is not affecting every paragraph on the page, and again it is styling the paragraph based on the fact that it is inside a div. If we pick the if we create another div and put another paragraph inside, let me say I'll just copy this whole thing, copy it, then I go down, descendant selectors at work, also put that here. By the time we refresh our page and reload it, see it styles both of them the same way, because this actually refers to every paragraph tag inside the div. Now you can use descendant selectors in a lot of ways. You can use them to refer to IDs inside elements. You can use it to refer elements inside IDs. But what you have to note is that when you're referring to an ID inside an element, for example an ID inside a div tag, let's say the ID is some ID, it has to be div pound some ID without space in between. Note that the same applies for class. The period some class, let's say some class with div. This is actually saying style every element with a class of some class inside a div tag. No space. Don't copy this. This needs a space, this doesn't, so keep that in mind. Good. Now the third use of style sheet we're going to be looking at is using an external file. To style our pages. Now to do this, we're actually going to need to create another file, a CSS file. Now, not an HTML page. We will need to create a clean CSS file. So what we just do is go to File, New. I'll pick a file. Then I'll just save it as style.css. I just click finish. Good. So create a file for me. Very blank. You don't need to put any opening and closing style tags here. All you have to do is define your styles. So what I'm going to do here is go back to my test.html, try and create some tags to work with that will be styled externally. So I just let me go down here and do a div tag. Yeah, div, opening, closing div. Then I was styled externally. Okay, I'm going to set an ID of external on this. Sorry about that. ID equals external. So you see the structure of my HTML code. Div ID is equals to external, and the text inside says I was styled externally. So what I do here is I go to my first, let's see that in the browser, refresh it. You see I was styled externally, shows there with no styling yet. Then I go to my style.css, and the same way I was doing at my document level, I just refer to my ID, that's external, opening and closing parentheses, and I say color maroon, font weight bold, font size 30 pixels. Good, that's 30 pixels. So I do that and I come to and I refresh the page and nothing basically happens. Yeah, that basically happens. Now that's because we haven't created any relationship between this style.css file and text.html. There has to be something linking text.html to style.css. That is a way to import our CSS file onto this page so that I can control elements on this page. So how is this done? We go into our head tag, preferably under the title. Then we use a special tag called link. Then set an attribute called rel, set the value to style sheets. Then we set a type, text, that's CSS. Then we import our file with the href attribute Same type we'll see in anchor tags. Then we type in the path to our CSS file, and since both our CSS file and HTML file are in the same root, we'll just call it directly style.css. If I refresh this, I'll go back to my page. I refresh the page, then my styling comes nicely. I was styled externally. You see, now we have a relationship between these two pages, our text.html and our style.css. They can work together. I can add more styles to this. I can say font style, italic, can give it a text decoration, this decoration of underline, and go back to my browser, refresh it, and all those styles take effect. So you see, the lovely thing about this CSS, really wonderful. You use it to do a lot of things. Cool. I can even set a background color to the page from here. Say body, and say background. Can just call background directly and just set the color value. Let's just say my sky blue. Be nice. Sky blue. Oh yeah. Refresh my page, and we have a nice background. So CSS is actually responsible for making your page sweet, for making your page look very beautiful. The difference between a very beautiful web page and a poorly designed web page is basically the CSS. HTML has a lot to do also, but CSS plays the most part in making your pages look cool. So what have we learned? We've learned how to use inline styling, which we used for our link here using the style attribute. We also learned how to use document level using the style tags, and that's the whole bunch of what we're doing here, using the style tag to define styles for the document. Then thirdly, we learned how to use external file, that's externally importing our CSS file using the link tag. And we also learned a lot about IDs, classes, and descendant selectors. So there's still a lot to CSS, there's still a whole lot, but this is just meant to give you an introduction to CSS, how to write CSS syntax without errors. You go out there, get a lot of CSS properties you feel you can use to style your page in a very wonderful way, and just imagine, and everything you imagine, bring it to life, and have cool web pages. I wish you all the best. Thank you.